Legends of Thezmar has officially taken over my life. We have our first 5 stars of the year. Lay in bed, headphones on, Indigo Ridge. I don't even know what's happening anymore. It's currently 5:20 a.m. I'm attempting to talk a little bit quietly because my roommate is asleep. Okay, so let's just go from the beginning, actually, shall we? Let's backtrack even further. Okay, I read Slaying the Shadow Prince. Was this during Realmathon? Maybe during March or so? I love this book, okay? I, for some reason, took a minute, then finally read Blood and Steel. I gave Blood and Steel 5 stars. Why I didn't immediately read Thousand Ruins, I have no idea. I ordered it pretty soon after reading Blood and Steel, but I just never pick it up. And when I was thinking about what book would be the perfect first book for this year, obviously this one, I was kind of debating if I was going to do reading booktuber favorites videos, which I think I'm technically still going to, but I posted on my Instagram stories a couple weeks ago asking for you guys' favorite books of 2024. Bailey Nicole Reads, she replied with Legends of Thezmar, and I was like, okay. Twist my arm, why don't you? I started it technically January 2nd, the first chapter, okay? I quite literally put the book down, squealed. Thursday night, I read the first 10%. I didn't read a whole lot on Friday night. I ended up taking Finley to the vet for his annual stuff. And then I went and got some yarn to start my genre blanket. So I didn't end up reading at all Friday. So then I picked this up Saturday. I read the ever-living crap out of this book. I had anticipated where the ending for this book was going to go in somewhat of a fashion. I think that there's a very specific plot line that I anticipate and that I think could still happen, and I think that may be how Fates and Furies go. I don't know, we'll see, but I was anticipating something similar-ish the way that this occurred. So while I did anticipate the ending of this, I was still absolutely... What? I just screamed WTF into the void as soon as I put this book down. Tonight, last night, Saturday night, whatever you want to call it, I stayed up until probably about 2 o'clock reading Thousand Ruins is when I officially finished it. I then was like, I'm just gonna go ahead and start Fate and Furies, and I'm probably gonna fall asleep while reading it, and I won't get that far into it. It'll be fine. It's now 5:15 a.m. and I'm 39% of the way through Fate and Furies. So I was fully anticipating waiting a little bit and being able to kind of kick off this vlog and all of these updates in the morning. However, clearly I cannot believe what is happening at the moment. I'm absolutely just whoa. I feel like we have really been building to the point that this book currently is at. However, the way that it's going, I didn't anticipate it being the way that it's going. I am utterly you know the whole enemies to lovers and suddenly it's 3 a.m. kind of thing, that kind of happened here, but in a different fashion because different tropes and things. However, I blinked and suddenly I hadn't slept. So pardon me for looking like an absolute mess who needs to wash her hair and clearly take a nap, but I cannot take a nap. At this point I am fully sat. The sun's gonna rise eventually, and I'm probably just gonna sit down and finish this book because I am wow. So like I said, I started with Slaying the Shadow Prince, and I was really conflicted even when I read Blood and Steel. How was I going to feel reading that as a prequel as opposed to reading it in between book 2 and 3? Now, having gotten to book 3, I really do feel I don't know, I feel like you could really go either way, but I personally am very much so glad that I had read it and then I could just jump into book 3, because if I would have stopped on book 2, go and read Shadow Prince, I wouldn't have liked I still would have liked Shadow Prince, but it would have taken me a longer time to get to a like point because I'd still be focusing on what's happening here. And then I feel like book 3 wouldn't have been pages are turning themselves as much, coming not freshly off of book 2. So I honestly think I'm going to say that I recommend reading Shadow Prince first. However, I do want to point out, because I read Shadow Prince and Blood and Steel so many millions of moons ago, I would recommend not doing that. I would recommend picking these books up and binge reading this whole series. There are certain details that I don't think that these details are really aggressive, but there are definitely points where I'm having to be wait, what did that happen? Wait, what was that? I feel like I want to go reread the first books a little bit just so I can go back and refresh my brain on what that plot is. But I'm not necessarily missing out on anything by not having those points like automatically at the top of my brain and having to refresh my memory into that. So while I do wish that I had binge read this series from the get-go, I'm glad that I am reading it now. However, I think because in my brain, I have been significantly further in this series for much longer in my head than I have actually been, because I started with the prequel. I think that Slaying the Shadow Prince, it gives you a really solid introduction to the world, but it also gives you more details than Blood and Steel even thought about giving you. So I think that having the introduction to this sidebar world over here and then coming back into the actual series made me feel like, even only having read the first technically book in this series, that I was a lot further along. Maybe I'd only had one book to connect to these particular characters, but I had been connected to the world. So I think that that was an interesting switch my brain kind of had to make, being like, girl, you have only read book 1 in the series, but I felt like I had read half of the series. But now that I've read half of the series, I am yeah. I think that had I tried to read this in like a random other time, would I be liking it as much? Yeah, probably. But the fact that I'm just like full send delusion, no sleep, no, I don't even know what the phrase is anymore. I'm just completely diving into these books. It's so good. Slaying the Shadow Prince. It's technically a prequel set in this same world, but it takes place 5-6 years, I think technically 6 years before Blood and Steel starts. However, it takes place following the love story of Drew and Talamir. Now, Talamir is technically Wilder, who is the main love interest in Blood and Steel. That was his mentor. So you're getting to see the mentor being built up. You're getting to see a lot of the backstory being developed, as well as the plot and the overall problems that they were currently facing at that time within the world, as well as getting to see one of the like most well done romance lines in a fantasy romance that I've read in a really long time. Like, these characters are just, I'm so beyond obsessed with them, and I am we've still not answered the question at this point for what exactly happened to them, and I'm so badly needing to know. However, I really love this book, and it can totally be read as a standalone. Then you get into Blood and Steel. Now, this book actually sets up not only Thea and Wilder, but the actual current events. This is where like the clock kind of starts ticking for the series moving forward. This book definitely has a lot of building to it, but it's not building in the way that makes you feel like it's dragging. Like, there is setup. The plot takes some turns, as you would expect, but I really did like Blood and Steel. I think had I not have already read Shadow Prince and had a really good appreciation for this world, that also brings me to the point, like, you get such a different introduction to the world and such more details about the world when you start with Shadow Prince. So maybe you don't read it first, I don't know. Getting to watch Thea and Wilder form their relationship, and like, there's a lot of traveling that happens in here. There's a lot of relationship building, both the romance, but then also there's some friendships, both female and otherwise, which I love a good side character. I love me a good side character. And we get that in this series, and I am enjoying that a lot. So that's kind of our Blood and Steel brief overview. Thousand Ruins definitely takes more emphasis on the training. You get a lot of that in Blood and Steel, but you get even more in Thousand Ruins. Then you also get more details. There is some romance conflict. It's done in a way that I really was not sure that I was gonna like, okay? Then I started reading it. Like, literally from the first chapter, I was screaming, I was squealing, I wasn't, like, I'm still not over it. The number of quotes that are in this book that I highlighted, circled, will imprint onto my heart and soul and feelings, and would really like to transfer my Kindle annotations to this immediately. I think I was looking at my Goodreads, and I think there were like 272 highlights. So that's Thousand Ruins. And then we have Fate and Furies. I just got to technically chapter 18. This one is so much more action-packed than any of the other books, because I feel like we have finally developed these things, and now we're trying to figure out how to move forward. The situations that we have now found ourselves in are very angsty. And the way that this book is written is very much so we are moving. We're grooving. We're figuring out things. We're transitioning. The plot is twisted. It is moving. It is grooving. And I'm having like, I've had all intentions of going to sleep and I have now read 40% of this book. I have no plans to stop anytime soon. And I'm so glad that I decided to go ahead and immediately read Fate and Furies and do this as more of a binge style series as opposed to reading Vows and Ruins, say yay, great, cool, and then moving on to reading booktuber favorites and kind of doing that thing like I had initially planned on it, because actually completing this series really close together is just making it. I was gonna say it's making it so good, but also it's just purely making it. So I would fully recommend, if you're at all interested in this series, to do it that way. However, I think I'm kind of continuing to talk in order to avoid going back into this, because I know that I'm just like, I needed a minute to process everything that just happened, but also I need more urgently. So, I'll probably film a more official intro later when I look and, you know, think better than the current state of brain right now. But hi, welcome to the vlog. If you've already read this whole series, I'm sure you're just like laughing along watching me suffer. But if you've not read it, let this be your sign to pick the series up. It's so much fun. So this is labeled as an epic romantic fantasy. Depending on how you personally categorize and which author you're talking to, everybody's going to have different descriptions, categorizations, if you will, on fantasy, romance, romantasy, epic fantasy with romance, fantasy with romance, romance with fantasy. Like, everybody has very much so differing opinions and differing descriptions on that. And I can say that up until this point, an epic romantic fantasy sounds more, I almost want to say it's more romance. Okay. And I do think that is solely because up until this point, we have had a lot of main character development and training and like becoming who this character is as she is now. She's also figuring out and discovering a lot of things that are happening, and so as we find those things out, I'm assuming that more of the fantasy plot line starts going. But up until this point, the romance is what absolutely has to be taken out. Like, the plot lines, yeah, and I think the plot in this book is finally really starting to kick in, but in Vows and Ruins in particular, for me, that was all romance. Okay, Vows and Ruins very much so felt like we were building up a lot of romance, and then there was kind of like a fight scene at the end. Great, cool, moving on. Fate and Furies, however, is starting to feel a lot more action and plot driven. I'm curious to see as we continue on in this series how that will continue to evolve, and I can't wait to evolve with it. I feel like my brain chemistry is just like changing as we continue on. Anyways, I'm gonna, you know, lay down, turn off the lights. My candle's currently at 12%, so I might charge that, and I might just kind of like say F it, we ball, and continue to read. So happy Sunday morning. I can't. I really, low-key, I feel like I kind of am going to want to do a Shadow Prince reread after this. Should I have reread this before going into this? Maybe. Perhaps, but I'm in too deep now to stop and go back. I gotta go. Hi friends, I am currently listening to Indigo Ridge, and I'm right at the point where the suspense is starting to suspense. It's been a while since I've read a true romantic suspense that feels like this, where the book leading up to the suspense, like everything's cool, everything's great. We're kind of just rocking and we're rolling, we're reading things. We've got a cutesy little relationship. I think that the relationship isn't just like, like it's romantic, but it's not like romance, if you know what I mean. And then you get to the suspense. Let's go back and talk about, I guess, the last couple days, because it's currently Tuesday, so I binge read half of Fate and Furies. I also need to give you an update about Fate and Furies on Saturday night into the morning, because technically Sunday morning was when I read Fate and Furies, and then I went to sleep at like 5:30 right after I did the last vlog update. I woke up for Tori's Patreon readings, friends, and I proceeded to lay in bed, headphones on, Indigo Ridge, okay? And it was actually so fun. Then I proceeded to the rest of pretty much all day of Sunday, I laid in bed, did nothing, and listened to Indigo Ridge. Honestly, staring at a wall into the void was kind of everything to me. So it is now Tuesday. I didn't listen to any more of Indigo Ridge yesterday, but then I picked up Fate and Furies. I think I'm like, what, 85? I'm in between the 85 to 90% mark. And everything that I was really hoping that I would get out of this book, I'm getting at the moment. And I'm just having a really good little mood reading moment, okay? I was really anticipating kicking off this year, doing some very structured vlogs. And at this point, the structure is not structuring, okay? And I'm loving it. I think a lot of my friends are also kind of just riding on the mood read moment. And that's kind of... it's everything. So I am going to go finish Indigo Ridge. So far it has been pretty 3-star up until this point, but this suspense moment that I'm suspensing on right now is suspensing. So that could really bump up, because I feel like romantic suspense a lot of times, like the building is great, but then it's the suspense at the end that kicks it into freaking overdrive. And then also Fate and Furies. I cannot believe that book, I'm almost done with it, and then I only have one more book left. The whole reason that I specifically put a pin and that I specifically wanted to read Vows and Ruins at the beginning of this year was because I wanted to binge read it, and I wanted to make sure that I was prepped and primed in order to be alive and well and, you know, in the moment for the Iron Ember's release in this month. We're getting there, and we're having a fun time. However, the two characters that Iron and Ember is about... yeah, I'm gonna love it. I really think that is going to be so good. I did make the most fantastic soup earlier, and honestly, like, I figured it would be good, and I was kind of like, it'll be fine. Y'all, it was so good. So I'll link the recipe in the description box down below. One of those like vegetable soup kind of things that I was like, okay, it's gonna be a vegetable soup. No, it's a vegetable soup. So I made that. I need to go put the leftovers into individual bowls, because that has been just like the absolute meal prep lifesaver. I had 2 loads of clean laundry sitting on my desk, and I've had that laundry sitting on my desk for the last like several days. I have finally made it to the bottom of the first pile and most of the bottom of the second pile. So we're gonna finish up our laundry. We're gonna put all of that away. We are going to get some things cleaned, reset. We're gonna finish an audiobook, and we're gonna have a good time. Y'all, I absolutely just woke up and I am feeling haggard. However, it is Saturday. I have some reading updates for you all that I have filmed a couple times. We're trying out a new camera, which is very exciting. I, however, did not plug in the microphone correctly, and I'm still concerned that it's not recording any audio. So let me actually pause us. Let's double check this actually working before I get it too deep yet again. I think our business. Okay, I did not stir this coffee, and I just gotta... I'm having issues with hot coffee. I feel like every time that I make it lately, I either put way too much creamer or I put not enough creamer, and this time I didn't actually stir it, and I'm not gonna stir it now. Like, it's just going down the hatch at this point. But I have been on my double espresso game for so long. I don't know apparently how to make a regular cup of coffee. And it's fine. So some updates this week, because I feel like it's been a couple days since I have updated you guys. My bestie McKenna was in town, so we had ourselves a little girls' week, and it was actually so much fun. She was in town for a work thing, and usually she ends up staying with me. Speaking of which, this camera that we have at the moment, courtesy of Ken. God bless you. Since we ended up just kind of like laying around and rotting all weekend, but on Wednesday that she was here, we went and got new piercing. So I did get my rook pierced, but then I also got a new flat on this side, which I'm so glad that I finally did, because I've been wanting to get a new piercing for a while. It's been eons since I have gotten a new piercing. I feel like it's been, when was it actually? I think this mid cartilage I got low-key like 2.5 years ago. I don't know, it's been a hot minute, and I feel suddenly like it's a new year, new me. And who would have thought that a piercing would do that? Honestly, it would make sense that it would do that, but I'm feeling it very much at the moment. Anyways, I don't know how long I'm going to keep doing this, but the piercer, Not the piercer herself, but the lady who was checking out, she told us to spray the little saline solution in the cap and then use a Q-tip, and then like don't double dip the Q-tip or whatever. And that was the best way to clean it versus just spraying it, because then you don't end up having to like water hose yourself every 2 seconds. But I'm also kind of concerned that like I'm gonna get little cotton fluffies everywhere. So we'll see how long I actually clean it this way, but it's fine. But if you are curious, I was really scared to get the rook. Like I felt like it was gonna hurt so bad. And I was also really kind of more so into the idea of a faux rook. But because I was thinking that I didn't have the anatomy for a real rook, and then I was like, but I always really, really loved all the girlies that have hoops in their rooks. I always think that they're so cool, especially like the really like jeweled looking ones. I think those are always so pretty. And so I was talking to the piercer, and she was like, yeah, you could just do it. You don't have any reason that's stopping you from doing it. And I was like, period. So we ended up doing that, and I was like, I initially walked in and I told her, hey, I don't know if I know that I want to do a flat and a rook. This whole space on this upper ear was blank. I was like, I don't really know like what I want to do on what side, but I think I want to do both of them like eventually. So I can't really decide what I want to do, but I think I'll go ahead and pierce one ear or the other or whatever. And she was like, you can actually do both of them. She was like, do you have like a neck pillow to sleep on? And I was like, well, I do have a boppy that, you know, like it's for babies that I use for crocheting and reading. And she was like, period. So just do both of them. You can heal them at the same time. And I was like, genius. So I ended up getting both sides pierced, which low key has actually been working out really well, because again, I just clean everything at the same time. And I also like have a way to sleep on it. I will say the rook did not hurt like really at all. That was probably one of my least painful piercings, low key. And also with the placement of it, because it's at the front of my ear, I don't like knock it around it. Like the only complaint that I have about the rook so far is that when the particular barbell, it was slid up for a little bit at one point, and I could like just feel it on the inside of my ear. So I got that like taken care of, scooched around, and that's been great. This flat, on the other hand, because it is like right at the top of my ear, it's kind of annoying because I feel like it's very prone to being smacked. We're doing good. I did get the little, I don't know if you could actually see that. I got the little star, like North Star looking earring on that side, which I'm really obsessed with. But then my second lobe piercing, the earring is just gone. So I need to order more earrings for that. But anyways, that's the ear update that you totally asked for, that I'm absolutely gabbing about for literally no reason, because I actually need to kind of focus and pretend-ish to get ready, because we're going to go into yet another sidebar. I'm just going to go, let me actually start getting ready while we go into all of these side quests. Apparently this vlog is turning into, I wanted it to be a very structured, as we talked about, vlog, and it's just turning into chatty goodness. So yay. I had a grooming appointment for the dogs that my roommate had scheduled, and it was supposed to be yesterday. However, this week got really, really cold and kind of sort of snowed, and everything froze, right? Including apparently the groomer's water. And she texted my roommate, but Jessie works nights, and so she was already asleep by the time that she had gotten texted. And so the groomer's like, yeah, it said that she'd read it. And I was like, yeah, probably did somehow. Like that's our luck. So I left work, took all 3 dogs, drove all the way over there just to find out that she, you know, had a misfortune occur. So we had to end up rescheduling that for today. But today I have reading sprints, and they were scheduled at 11. She was like, can we just do same time tomorrow? And I was like, I actually have readings. I have a thing scheduled. Can we schedule it for the afternoon? And she was like, no, I actually already have somebody in the afternoon, but we can drop them off before your thing. And I was like, cool. So I'm gonna have to end up picking him up and do shorter sprints, which is not ideal, but then we'll have very clean and fresh doggies after, which is going to be so needed. They are woolly mammoths at this point. It's currently like 8:45 or so. I should probably check. Oh, good thing I checked, because it's almost 9 o'clock. Also, in case you're curious, I am really loving the ability to have my phone while gabbing. It's making my life very easy. So I'm glad to finally be updating on the camera situation. The convenience factor is so there right now. Okay, let's talk about Juniper Hill real quick, and then we'll get back into Fate and Furies, which I have finished. So I finished Indigo Ridge, liked it. I don't know, I wasn't obsessed with it, but it was definitely fun. And then I started Juniper Hill. I'm gagged by Juniper Hill at the moment, okay? I have not really listened to much more of it, again, because I'm have, you know, new holes in my ears, and I'm obsessed with my beats, and also I cannot figure out where the heck my AirPods are. I'm 90% certain that they're in my purse, but here's the thing, I've not actually looked for them. And so I really, for some reason, I just absolutely detest my AirPods after getting my over-the-ear headphones. So we've been busy this week. I've just really not like made that a focus. But today, during sprints and or maybe this afternoon, I need to do a combination of finally starting my bullet journal. Okay, I have been putting it off because I was trying to get stickers from Etsy. I finally got the stickers like 2 weeks ago and I still haven't started because last weekend I was busy, and then this weekend I am kind of busier, but like also I need my reading journal, so I need to start that. But I bought the yarn to start making my genre blanket. I need to order different colors online because they didn't only have so many in store, but I also need to make sure I'm kind of making up this pattern. Like I want to do granny squares, tie them all together with a border, but the granny squares that I want to do, I need to like gauge it all out, figure out what hook I want to use, figure out what kind of granny square, because I kind of want to do like a 4-corner one versus a 4-corner like filled up one versus the traditional double crochet. So genre blanket needs to be started, and then reading journal also needs to be started this weekend. So I've got some audiobook things ahead of me that I will definitely need. However, some things about this book that I'm just absolutely really into at the moment. I can see a lot of people not being into this book. I can see some people seeing some flaws with this relationship. I'm really into it. I think that the main idea here is that you have a female main character that is going through it. She is a single mom. She's kind of running away from her life as it is, and was basically gotten disowned by her parents, and so she is forging out a new life for her and her son, who is like a fresh baby, okay? Like he's like 8 weeks old, I think, at the very beginning, and she is just doing her best, okay? That is a crazy time period, as you know, one would expect. And so she is quite literally just surviving at this point. However, she ends up moving into Knox, which is Griffin from Book 1, his brother. She moves into his loft because there are no apartments in town, because, you know, it's a small town and there's no room at the inn. So she's living in his loft. He's listening to her baby cry left, right, and center. And so they kind of naturally start up this camaraderie, but he starts having all these interactions with this baby, but then also with the female main character herself. I think if I was being more critical, I could definitely see the point of like, he was just kind of like looking for a kid, and he found a kid, and then he also found a girl, and he and the girl are true loves, but also it was really because he liked the kid, right? You could make that argument, and I think that I see that argument, but I also think that I am just so in the mood for this right now that I'm not caring anything critical about this book whatsoever. Okay, just kidding. Now it's 9 a.m. There is something about, first of all, a single dad trope. I love a single dad. I love a single dad trope. I think that reading a single mom trope, it's kind of giving the same things that I love about single dad, obviously, because it's really just single parent that I like. But because I've not really read, I don't know that I've ever read a single mom, actually. And so getting to see the trope that I really like, but from a different direction, is so entertaining. And I think that I am just in the mood for contemporary romance where I just like want them to have all of the silly, goofy, romancy moments that I'm not really evaluating like, wait, do these characters make sense? I'm evaluating like, oh my gosh, he's holding the baby. Like, it's really fun. There's something to be said about girl who needs help, boy swooping in and giving her some help, while also being really hot. But he wasn't swooping in because he wanted to be knight in shining armor. He was swooping in because he was just annoyed at the baby crying. He was like, well, it's fine, I'll help. Wait, I kind of like this baby. Wait, I kind of like her. Wait, oh. Do we bang now? Anyways, so I am really liking it. I think I actually am more like in the moment right now than I was with Indigo Ridge. I also think I have been fighting inner demons to remember the fact that this isn't like Indigo Ridge is book 1. I keep trying to say Juniper Hill. So the Lord gives his biggest battles to his strongest warriors, and I'm feeling pretty strong right now. Anywho, I have been really enjoying that, especially as kind of a palate cleanser in between reading Fate and Furies. Okay, do I really care that I cover that up? Honestly, not so much. So I started reading Fate and Furies. I thought that I was in between 80 and 85%. Going to find out I was at 91%. So I went and lay down and I finished it. I will go ahead and give myself the complaint, and I wish I hadn't done this way. I wish that I had waited to read the last half of it. I had basically stopped in the middle of this really big action point, and all of the urgency that we had been building up to that point, I had read that like a day ago. And so hopping into the middle of it, I didn't have the same. So I thought that the ending, like the ending was good, but I also wish that I had had the same urgency while reading it. But I also in a way glad that I did that, because the beginning of the rising action of the climax, whatever you want to call it structurally, I could not stop myself from reading it so fast, and I felt like I was having to be like, okay, eyeballs, no, read this line. So I was kind of like glad that I actually was reading all of the details almost. So however, I did finish it and I gave it 5 stars. We have our first 5 stars of the year, and I am so just enamored with this series. I think that the overall plot isn't so detailed. There's not a whole bunch of politics. It is really more relationship driven with some plot in the background, but also I really like the magic system. I love these characters. I love the relationship development we're going through, because it's not like they got together and it was all sunshine and rainbows and then we've got plot pulling them apart and it's just annoying. I feel like these two characters are really working through some things as they are together, and they really both just make each other stronger while also sticking up for themselves. Like, there's not a miscommunication trope at all here, which I love, but these two characters definitely are like, wait, we have to take a minute, because Wilder is training Thea. Wilder can't like beat her up and like push her to be a warrior if he's too busy being like, oh, I love her, I don't want to do that to her, I want to protect her. So watching him like want what's best for her and figure out how he is going to be able to do that for her, I loved it. However, the two characters that Iron and Embers is about, we have met them and I really love them. And I cannot wait to see them go through whatever it is that they're going through. Helen Scherurer. Okay, Helen Scherurer announced on her Instagram, I think yesterday, this woman, okay, she posted a 2025 update. We are not only getting Iron and Embers, which we already knew we were getting, we're getting a second book this year. And not only are we getting a second book, we're getting the third book. Are you kidding me? I literally commented and said, I'm sorry, what? And she liked the comment, and I was like, I hope she knows. And I know she knows, but like, how crazy is that? Like, are you kidding? I don't know how the heck she's writing so fast. So part of me is like, should I be concerned that she's rushing it? But then also, I don't feel like she would rush it. But then I also wonder, has she been writing this series alongside Legends of Thezmar? Because she's an indie pub. When you've written so many books and you know how to write books, you can do it like fairly quickly, as long as you're not like writing block, right? And it's like you have the skills to be able to do it. But then also you don't have to sit around and wait for publication and printing and this, that, and the other to actually be able to publish something like that. Iron and Embers, the series is being trad-pubbed in, what is it, the UK? Internationally, I think, and so it makes sense that she would have already had this written, but I'm still just absolutely flabbergasted by the fact that she's going to be releasing 3 books this year. 3 fantasy books at that. Like, hello? I'm not mad at it. Any reasons, I'm going to attempt to redo this bun. Doing a bun never goes the way that you want it to go until you unintentionally are doing one, like I just did that one. That did not do what I wanted it to do. That's kind of better. We're rolling with it at this point. Anyways, I'm gonna go finish drinking my coffee. I'm going to straighten up my room because my desk is currently a mess because I have this whole camera bag just like spread out. I have got the new IKEA shelf that I literally ordered in December still on the floor, my big old bag of yarn for my crochet blanket, and then I need to go charge my computer and stuff for Sprint. So we're going to get all that in order, and I will check back in with you when I have, more chatty updates. This coffee is definitely already cold, but it's still good. Things are going well here. I decided to go, hey, you're cut off. I decided to go to Tea to Go to get an energy tea, which, I do love me a good energy tea. I didn't realize that they had pup cups now, and they had already, they used to just have, like, they would give you dog treats, but they would, hi.
thank you. They used to just give you like milk bones, I think, but they would give them to me whenever I had all the dogs in a little cup, because they would give, the multiple treats. They would just give me one cup, so I would not have to, like hold it all. So they said, okay, we'll get you some pup cups. And I was like, great, cool. So then they handed over, and it was whipped cream, and Oliver's sitting in my lap, and he immediately just like dive bombed to the actual like whipped cream pup cup. So we have freshly groomed dogs that now have whipped cream all over their faces, and they look all so happy, and how could I dare take this joy away from them? And I won't, in fact. So
it's now midnight. I have been spending the last, I guess since like 8 o'clock or so, the last like 4 hours. It's definitely like closer to 9 by the time I actually started. I'm gonna be real. I keep pretending that I read way more than I do, and then I'm like, you doom scrolled for an hour, girly pop. So we made it here. Did I finish it, or did it finish me? And the answer to both of those questions would in fact be yes. I have officially finished the Legends of Thezmar series, and I feel so emotionally ragged at the moment, which is perfect because I obviously would want to be that way finishing the end of a series. However, I will definitely say Fate and Furies is still my favorite book in the series. I think that this book gets 4 stars. Had I not been so in the mood for this book, I don't know that I would have given it a 4-star. Like, I think that this book is maybe not the best conclusion to a series. However, I really liked it. I had watched a couple people's vlogs about this book when it very first came out. And one thing I remember very vividly from a couple months ago was people talking about how many battle pep talks we were doing. I didn't feel like there were as many of those as I necessarily was going into it thinking. However, this book is very much so a lot of battle planning and a lot of leading up to a specific battle that I didn't feel that was all that intense. And I also didn't feel like the resolution of this book was all that final. And I think a lot of that goes into the fact that the Ashes of thezmar being I'm so excited for that series. Oh my gosh. I think that series, because that was going to continue on in this world didn't have to end as final and as climatic and as resolute as maybe a conclusion in a series typically would. However, I am absolutely so thankful that I waited until now. This whole time I've been upset that I have waited until now, but I'm finally so glad that I waited until now to read this, because the way that I can't not possibly imagine waiting any longer for Iron Embers. I'm so ready. I'm so curious how it's going to go, because we've had so much build up between the two main characters of that book, and there is also a clear-ish, we can say, idea of where that series is going to go, in terms of we know where this world left off. We've had a prophecy for what that next world is going to be going into, but the prophecy is obviously like so vague that you have clearly no idea what that world is going to be going into necessarily. But the main characters have had all this build up, so I'm curious like where we're going to start in this world, what's going to happen. There are so many plot lines in this storyline that have been fairly unresolved, to the point where I knew that I would need something more after this book, and now I'm really feeling that need. But it also makes sense knowing that book is in existence and that whole series is in existence, that this is the way that it ended. However, I loved it a lot, and I have so much respect for so many elements of this book. While I did not love how much plotting we were doing in terms of going into the final battle and all of the planning, one of the lower amounts of action, there were so many moments that made up for those things that I kind of didn't even care, because the amount of emotions that I felt, and I felt like I had been so connected to these characters because I had so many avenues and so many different, entry points, I guess, to connect to these characters, because like I was super, super, super connected to our novella characters, and then I was also connected to our characters that we have met throughout the main series. You absolutely have to read the novella before you read this book for 100% certain, and I would definitely read it before Fate and Furies. I personally would I'm still kind of going back and forth with, do I recommend reading Shadow Prince before Blood and Steel or in the middle? Honestly, my personal recommendation here is that you read Shadow Prince first, but then you have to binge read the rest of the series pretty immediately because, like me, you're going to want to go back and reread it. I still want to go back and reread Slaying the Shadow Prince. However, I think I just now understood the name of that book. Which means that I definitely should have read that sooner rather than, I guess, later rather than sooner in this case. I do feel as if a lot of the spice in this book did get very repetitive, and I was kind of like, okay, like we've seen this before, deja vu central. I felt like the frequency was kind of not like super high, but like kind of high, and also the actual content of it was a lot of the same. So I didn't necessarily love that. However, getting to see these characters be able to connect on both obviously the romance level that we love, but there's so many friendship levels, so many different relationship levels in this book. You obviously have a whole ton of mentor-mentee relationships all over the place. You got friends, you've got female friendships, you have got other mentors, other mentees, you have got other relationships that I will not name that I'm very curious to see. We have a certain character. We didn't get any conclusion on them, so I'm curious what the conclusion on them will be. Will it be just kind of like we won't ever get any more information, or will they come up more into play in Ashes of thezmar? I'm so curious. Regardless, I recommend the series. Like, obviously, are we going to be surprised? I'm so glad that I was able to start my year off with this series in particular, and then also, you know, we have been reading some other things too, but this right here was so good. I'm not ready for it to be over with. I think I literally just put this book down and I'm still like processing the fact that it is over, and I'm wrapping my brain around the fact that like I have to put this book down because I am done with it. I'm like, wait, like I felt like that just went by so quickly. Helen, you really did that. And that, my friends, is not only the first completed series of the year, which I'm so glad to say that, but also the first reading vlog of the year. I'm gonna need a minute to process everything that just happened the last little bit. It was time so very well spent. If you have made it this far into the vlog and you wanted to let me know that you were here, go ahead and leave a lightning bolt emoji, because that is an emoji that is very near and dear to my heart. Anyways, that is it for this one. I hope you have a great rest of your day or night wherever you are, and I will catch you in the next one.